So yeah, we can start with a short motivation. We can think the purpose of my life is to be benefit and help to other sentient beings. In order to be greatest help and benefit to all sentient beings, I must achieve fully enlightened state. And in order to achieve fully enlightened state, I must actualize the five paths and the 10 bhumis. And to do that, I must meditate, practice. And for that, learn about those practices. Therefore, I'm going to listen to the teaching, the talk. Okay, so we can do the opening prayers.
Could we have the prayers up? Praise to Shakyamuni Buddha, to the founder, the endowed transcendent destroyer, the one gone beyond, the foe destroyer, the completely perfected, fully awakened being, perfect in knowledge and in good conduct, Sugata, knower of the world, supreme guide of human beings to be tamed, teacher of gods and human beings, to you, the completely and fully awakened one, the endowed transcendent destroyer, the glorious conqueror, the subduer from the Shakya clan, I prostrate, make offerings, and go for refuge. Homage to the Supreme Buddha, homage to the Dharma refuge, homage to the great Sangha, to all three ever devout homage, to all worthy of respect, bowing with bodies as many as all realms atoms, in all aspects, with supreme faith, I pay homage. Do not commit any non-virtuous actions, perform only perfect virtuous actions. Subdue your mind thoroughly, this is the teaching of the Buddha. A star, a visual aberration, a flame of a lamp, an illusion, a drop of dew or a bubble, a dream, a flash of lightning, a cloud. See conditioned things as such. Through these merits may sentient beings attain the rank of all-seeing, subdue the foe of faults, and be delivered from samsara's ocean, perturbed by the waves of aging, sickness, and death. The Perfection of Wisdom Sutra, I prostrate to the Arya Triple Gem. Thus did I hear at one time, the Bhagavan was dwelling on massive Ultra Mountain in Rajagriha together with a great community of monks and a great community of bodhisattvas. At that time, the Bhagavan was absorbed in the concentration on the categories of phenomena called profound perception. Also at that time, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avalokiteshvara looked upon the very practice of the profound perfection of wisdom and beheld those five aggregates also as empty of inherent nature. Then, through the power of the Buddha, the Venerable Shariputra said this to the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avalokiteshvara. How should any son of the lineage train who wishes to practice the activity of the profound perfection of wisdom? He said that, and the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avalokiteshvara said this to the Venerable Shariputra. Shariputra, any son of the lineage or daughter of the lineage who wishes to practice the activity of the profound perfection of wisdom should look upon it like this, correctly and repeatedly holding those five aggregates also as empty of inherent nature. Form is empty, emptiness is form. Emptiness is not other than form. Form is also not other than emptiness. In the same way, feeling, discrimination, compositional factors, and consciousness are empty. Shariputra, likewise, all phenomena are emptiness, without characteristic, unproduced, unceased, stainless, not without stain, not deficient, not fulfilled. Shariputra, therefore, in emptiness, there is no form, no feeling, no discrimination, no compositional factors, no consciousness, no eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind, no visual form, no sound, no odor, no taste, no object of touch, and no phenomenon. There is no I element and so on, up to and including no mind element and no mental consciousness element. There is no ignorance, no extinction of ignorance, and so on, up to and including no aging and death, and no extinction of aging and death. Similarly, there is no suffering, origination, cessation, and path. There is no exalted wisdom, no attainment, and also no non-attainment. Shariputra, therefore, because there is no attainment, bodhisattvas rely on and dwell in the perfection of wisdom, the mind without obscuration and without fear. Having completely passed beyond error, they reach the endpoint of nirvana. All the Buddhas who dwell in the three times also manifestly completely awaken to unsurpassable, perfect, complete enlightenment in reliance on the perfection of wisdom. Therefore, the mantra of the perfection of wisdom, the mantra of great knowledge, the unsurpassed mantra, the mantra equal to the unequaled, the mantra that thoroughly pacifies all suffering, should be known as truth, since it is not false. The mantra of the perfection of wisdom is declared, Payata Om Gate Gate Paragate Parasamgate Bodhi Soha. Shariputra, the Bodhisattva, Mahasattva, should train in the profound perfection of wisdom like that. Then the Bhagavan arose from that concentration and commended the Bodhisattva Mahasattva of Avalokiteshvara, saying, well said, son of the lineage. It is like that. It is like that. One should practice the profound perfection of wisdom, just as you have indicated. Even the Tathagatas rejoice. The Bhagavan having thus spoken, the Venerable Shariputra, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avalokiteshvara, and those surrounding in their entirety, along with the world of gods, humans, asuras, and Gandharvas, were overjoyed and highly praised that spoken by the Bhagavan. Mandala offering. Sajipo ki shukshik Meto Tram Rirabling Shi Ni De Gyan Padi Sange Jindu Nikte Uwa Yi Troku Dakshin Cho Parsho Idam Gururatna Mandalakam Niryatayam. Taking refuge and generating bodhicitta, once in English, twice in Tibetan. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits I create through listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha in order to benefit all sentient beings. Sangye Chodang Soki Chognam La Changchu Bardu Dagmi Kyabsu Chi Dagi Chunyen Gepe Sonamgi Drola Penshir Sangye Drupar Shok Sangye Chodang Soki Chognam La Changchu Bardu Dagmi Kyabsu Chi Dagi Chunyan Gepe Sonamgi Drola Penshir Sangye Druparsha.
이제 두전이로네 어떤 방배제 담배순에 된대배 고담대로 잡서로 so last week we kind of left on the verses where Lama Tsongkhapa mentioned that the earlier school of thoughts before the Buddhism they cannot understand the emptiness because they don't accept dependent arisings. Because as we mentioned before, some of the schools, they believe that, things do not exist by cause and conditions. It's kind of like random, and they give some example. Then other school, even though they thought there is cause and conditions for the existence at the very beginning of the, object, very beginning of the universe, the world. But it was created. It comes through permanent. One of which is all the general, primary general, which is the permanent. So all these are display of that permanent, And then again, some other schools, they believe, is created by permanent creator God, and so on. So the beginning of all of that, they do not accept. Is that it comes through similar cause and conditions, and so because of that, they cannot accept at the very beginning of that is as a dependent arisings. And so therefore, when you don't understand and accept the dependent arising, then you cannot understand the emptiness. So therefore, they are unable to, they cannot understand the emptiness, the profound emptiness. And then within the Buddhist school of thought, the tenets, some of those tenets who accept and believe the tenets of the Bhavasika or Tantrikas, they accept, dependent arising, but they use that dependent arising to prove things exist inherently, instead of proving that as a reason to non-inherent existence. They use the reason opposite, just the opposite. The plant is truly existence, inherently existence, because it is dependent arisings. And so therefore, again, they are also unable to understand the emptiness. And so, whereas the Madhyamika, the middle way schools, because of the dependent arising, therefore is empty of inherent existence, empty of truly existence. So therefore, so for other schools, even some of the Buddhist schools or tenets, the difficulty, they are unable to differentiate between existing and truly inherently existing, non-existing and non-truly existence. We have to differentiate existing and truly existing. They are not same. Okay? Truly existing and existing is not same. All phenomena exist, but they do not exist truly or inherently. But for them, not being able to distinguish these two things become a problem. And also in Madhyamika, there is a difference between non-existent and non-truly existence. The phenomena are non-truly existent, but they are not non-existence. Are you clear? Huh? Yeah. So again, and when you differentiate that two things, then you don't fall in any of those two extremes. Because for them not being able to differentiate those two things, then they fall in one of the extremes. The moment they think is existent, they think is truly existent. The moment you think is not truly existent, they think is non-existence. Because they don't differentiate those two. That is the problems that are happening. So I think we just finished verse number 13 last time. That's where we said that too, not as a utter non-existence, nor as a intrinsic existence. The non-contingent is like a sky flower. So everything is dependent arising. Everything is dependent on another condition and other factors. If it's not dependent on other factors and conditions, then it becomes non-existence. If something do not depend on other condition or other factor to exist, then it becomes non-existence. Like the sky flowers. Sky flower is example of non-existence because there is no flowers growing. It's an example of non-existence because that sky flower is not dependent arising. It's not dependent on other factors and conditions. Hence, there's nothing that is not dependent. So therefore, there's no phenomena that is not exist non-dependent. If things exist through their essence, if things exist through their essence or from their own nature, from its own side, their dependence on cause and conditions for their existence is contradictions. If something can exist from its own side by its own power without, if something can exist independently or inherently by its own essence, by itself, from its own power, then it cannot be dependent arising. It will be independent. And if it is not dependent arising, then it cannot be, you cannot say they exist by depending on cause and conditions. That will be contradictions. So, you have to understand there's a contradiction that's something that exists by depending on other cause, conditions, or other factors, and something that is able to exist by itself from its own side. Can you see the contradictions? If something can exist by itself from its own side, then it means it's able to exist without depending on other factors, other conditions. If it exists by depending on other factors and other conditions, how can it exist by itself? How can it exist from its own side? Because it is not existing its own side or by itself because it's existing by depending on other factors, other conditions. Are we clear on that? Yeah. And so that is what in 400 verses, Aryadeva, Nagarjuna's main disciple, also says, if something exists by its own side or by itself, then it cannot depend on other conditions, factors. Something that exists by depending on other factors, conditions, cannot be existing by itself from its own side. That is contradictions. That is contradictions. And transitory phenomena. Okay, transitory phenomena. Impermanent transitory phenomena. They depend on its previous cause and conditions. Non-transitory phenomena, all phenomena depends on its parts. It depends on its parts to exist. Without its parts, the object cannot exist without depending on its parts. So that object to exist as that object and function as that object, it had to depend on all the parts that make that object. Are we clear? Yeah. If we take away each part of the car, the wheel, the engines, each part of the engines, the body, without depending on each part, it cannot function as a car. It cannot be a car. It can only be a car and function as a car by depending on all the parts that make that car and function as a car. And that apply to all other phenomena, all the phenomena. And then if you go further, then the most subtle dependent arising, we also discussed at the very beginning, is that everything depends on the thought, the observer, the thought, the mind. That impute the objects, and maybe that might come more because that is more subtle, okay? Therefore, verse number 15, therefore, since no phenomena exist other than origination through dependence, no phenomena exists other than being devoid of intrinsic existence, you thought. So the Buddha explained, here he's saying, Buddha, you explain everything is empty and everything is dependent arises. So there is no phenomena, no object that is not empty of inherent existence. And there is no phenomena, no object that is not dependent arising, dependent origination. And so therefore all phenomena are empty of inherent existence as well as dependent arising. So therefore, those two does not contradict in one object. Okay? And same, Nagarjuna said in his fundamental treatise, same, there's no external, internal phenomena that is not empty, nor there is any phenomena, external phenomena that is not dependent origin, dependent arising. And so therefore, all phenomena are empty of inherent existence, empty as well as they are dependent arisings. So they are not, yeah. Because, verse number 16, because intrinsic nature cannot be negated, which means if everything is intrinsic nature or everything exists inherently, if everything exists intrinsic existing or nature or inherent existence, then you cannot negate that because that's the reality. You cannot negate you cannot negate that inherent existence. And if you cannot negate that inherent existence, because inherent existence or interesting nature or existence is the very nature of that, if that is the case, if phenomena possesses some intrinsic nature, nirvana would become impossible. And elaboration could not be ceased, you taught. The elaborations of all the concept, thoughts, and including all the delusion cannot be ceased. So here, the point he is making is, if everything is intrinsically or truly or inherently existence, exists that way, if the object exists that way, and that means, we ourselves and our mind is become truly existent, inherent existence. If our mind is inherent existence, then it will be same all the time. Our mind is full of delusion at the moment. Our mind is obstructed by the delusions. And we cannot free all these obscurations from our mind because it's very inherently existence. Our unsubdued mind cannot be transformed and changed into subdued mind if it is inherent existence. Our undisciplined mind cannot be disciplined through meditation and practice. So the delusions that we have, we cannot get rid of them because it's inherent existence. That is, if it is inherent existence, that is always with that. If it is inherent existing nature, then it cannot be changed by changing some other cause and conditions. Something inherently existent means is not dependent on other cause and conditions, other factors. And therefore, it cannot be changed by changing the cause and condition and factors. If that's the case, if our mind cannot be changed and if the delusion cannot be eliminated, then liberations or nirvana is not possible. It's not possible. And it is mentioned when you achieve liberations, or when you are in deep meditations, the emptiness, the elaborations of, a dualistic appearance of truly, and the dualistic appearance of subject and objects, the dualistic appearance of the conventional phenomena, they all cease. But if it's truly existing, if there's a truly existing, that cannot be ceased. Just as we have all this dualistic view at the moment, it will always remain that way. Do you get it? At the moment, we have all these elaborations of this dualistic view, the dualistic view of truly appearance of truly existence, the appearance of subject and objects, the appearance of conventional objects in our mind, also that they cannot be seized through practice and meditation, and that cannot be seized when you are in deep meditations on meditative equipoise on the ultimate nature of the mind. All this become impossible. Therefore, it's interesting, Junas try to explain Buddha's final thoughts, that the Buddha's final thoughts is that everything is empty of inherent existence. because of dependent arisings. Then the other school of thoughts says, if everything is empty of inherent a truly existence, then to you, it will be not possible of the Four Noble Truths. It will be not possible because it will be not possible for the Four Noble Truths. It will be not possible for the refuge. It will not be possible for the nirvana and liberations. To that, Nagarjuna says, is the other way around. He said, if it is not truly exist, because it is not truly existent, inherent existence, therefore everything is possible. If it's inherent existence, all this becomes non-possible. The very reason that you are actually making to me is actually the opposite. And the problem here, the problem with other schools is again, for them, if it is not truly existent, they cannot somehow establish something exists. How can something exist if they are not truly existent? That is the problem they are having. If there is not something from the objects, from its own side, how can you establish its existence? That is the problem they are having. As I mentioned before, for them, the difference, they try to make difference like the flower in my mind and the flower that's growing from the ground. They said the flower that's growing the ground, it is existing on its own side. The flower in my mind is not real, is not truly existing. It is not existing on its own side. It's just made by my mind. So they try to make those difference. And there is some reason. And they said that is the flower that grows from the ground is not same as the flower in my mind. It's just made up by my mind. But the flower in the ground is growing from its own side. Is truly, truly existing flowers. For them, it do not so therefore, if that flower do not exist from its own side or truly existing, how can you establish it exists? That is the problem they have. And I think not only they have, I think when we don't use our analysis in our everyday experience, that is how we feel like. Don't we? I mean, we feel, there is something from its own side. Can it be merely, do you get it? That is the not being able to establish something on the basis of merely label without existing its own side. That is the problem they are having. Whereas Nagarjuna, which is the Buddha's final thought, say something to exist, it do not have to exist from its own side or inherent existence. Even something which do not exist inherently from its own side, you can still establish it as existing and functioning of that objects. And that is the most subtle, difficult point of understanding of emptiness and dependent arisings, subtle dependent arisings, that everything could exist on the basis of merely label, merely imputations. What comes in your thought? I think when we say, this glass or this cup is merely, it exists by merely imputed, merely label, merely designations. Do you struggle? Yeah, we struggle. And that is why other schools are also struggling with that. That is where there are struggles. How can this be merely imputed, merely labeled? I can hold it, I can touch it, I can pour water, I can drink it. I can understand the cup in my mind is merely label. Do you get it? The cup in my mind is merely labeled, merely imputed because it does not hold the tea or whatever, and I cannot touch it. But this cup, how can it be? That is where they are having problem. So you can understand their problems, you know. But Nagarjuna is saying, even this cup that I'm able to hold, and it has that functionings, is merely label, as much as the cup in my mind is merely label. But they are not same. Even the both of them merely label cup. Okay, the cup in my mind, the image of the cup in my mind is merely label, as well as the cup this I'm holding and that I'm using it to drink. They both are merely label cup, but doesn't mean they are same. This cup is cup that exists relatively conventionally and function as a cup. Whereas the image in my mind do not exist as conventional cup. It cannot function, the functional cup. So therefore, even is merely label is not same. One is the functional cup and one is not functional cup or conventional cup. Okay. So that is why studying and understanding the tenets is important, because when it's not just debating, but it comes to such a subtleties, where the subtlety comes, and that is where if we don't understand those subtlety and difference of those subtlety, it is hard to have real understanding of emptiness. You know, because for other schools, if it's not truly existence, you know, then you cannot establish the existence of samsara. You cannot establish the existence of the sufferings. You cannot establish the cause of the suffering, nor you can establish the end of the sufferings, cessation, and nor you can establish the path that lead to cessations. And if there is no probable truth, then there is no Dharma. If there is no Dharma, then there is no teacher who taught the Dharma, the Buddha. You cannot establish. And nor you can establish Sangha that actualize the Dharma. And so therefore, the refuge is impossible. You cannot establish the refuge. You cannot establish the Four Noble Truth. You cannot establish the refuge, and you cannot establish the liberation, and so on. But Nagarjuna is, make the argument just the opposite. And he said, if it is truly inherently existing, all this become impossible. You cannot establish. But because it's non-inherently existing, therefore everything becomes possible. Because our mind is non-inherently existing, because our mind is dependent arisings, and because the delusions are dependent arisings and not inherently existence, So delusion arises on the basis of many causes and conditions. And when you stop the cause and conditions that give rise to delusion, then delusion can be ended. You know, if the suffering is inherently existing, then it is not dependent on other factors, cause and conditions. And if it is not dependent on other cause, condition, and factor, you cannot end or you cannot cease the suffering by ending the cause and condition that give rise to that suffering. But if it is not inherent existence, if it's dependent arisings, then the suffering arises because certain cause and conditions, certain factors, certain conditions. When you stop that conditions and factors, then there's no more suffering arising because of that. Therefore, that's how suffering can be ended, because it's dependent arising, because it's not truly inherent existence. Also, the cause and condition that give to rise is also possible to overcome, because there is cause and condition that can act as antidote to overcome that. The path. And path is possible to cultivate when you change the cause and condition. At the moment, we don't have the path, the realizations, but that can change if we do the right practice meditation, create the right cause and conditions. Through such right cause and conditions, through different practice meditation, we can develop that wisdom within us, the path within us, Dharma within us. Through cultivating that wisdom, the path, then we can overcome the root of that suffering, the delusion and karma, the delusion and karma. And thereby, then cessation, nirvana is possible. And therefore, Dharma is possible. Therefore, the Buddha who taught the Dharma is possible. Therefore, that the Sangha which has actualized that Dharma within them, that is possible. So then everything is possible. Everything is possible because it's non-inherent existence, because it's empty of inherent existence. And again, if you really analyze deeply and give enough thought, it makes more sense than Nagarjuna's, you know. Therefore, who can challenge you, you know? Who can challenge you for this ultimate thought that saying everything is empty of inherent existence because it's dependent arisings? No one can challenge that, because there is a reason, true reason and logic in that. On the other hand, who says things are inherently existence and things are not dependent arisings, or because of it is inherently existence, because of dependent arising, all of those do not have solid reason and logics. Those reason and logic cannot uphold and withstand. Whereas the reason and logic, everything is empty of inherent existence because of dependent arisings, that has the solid, unshakable reason and logics. And therefore, who can challenge? No one can challenge that concept, that theory, that philosophy. You who proclaim with a line roar in the assembly will learn one repeatedly that everything is utterly free of intrinsic nature. And so Buddhas, proclaim amongst everyone's full of, um, intelligence, learned one with all the most of the brightest mind, some of the most brightest, intelligent one among them. Buddha repeat again and again with proclaim, like a lion roar, without any fear, without any hesitations, that how everything is empty of inherent existence. How everything is empty of inherent existence. Because he was convinced with that because of his own experience. It's not just kind of creating some kind of theory, and sometimes we create theories about different things, different theory, different philosophies, which might not be the case. But in Buddha's case, he had the direct realization of that, direct experience of that. So he's speaking from his direct realization and experience. Because of that, it's like the lion roar without any fear, without any two-minded hesitations, and which cannot be challenged. Some tried to challenge, but they were unable to challenge. Mm. And then verse number 18. If there is no intrinsic existence at all, and all functionings as these arisings, and depends on that, what is needed to say that those converge without conflict. So, not only non-inherently existence and dependent arising, not only they don't contradict each others, okay? As we mentioned, not only they don't contradict each others, but because of dependent arisings, you establish is empty. And you establish dependent arising because of emptiness. Are we clear? Not only they don't contradict, or not only they don't contradict and conflict within one object, within one object. When we said object, taking just one object as example, but all the objects. Let's say a cup. Not only the cup is empty of inherent existence, but also is dependent arising. So both these dependent origin or dependent arising and empty of inherent existence exists within this same object, same cup. They don't contradict conflict. But not only they don't contradict conflict, this cup is empty of inherent existence. Why? Because it dependent arises. Not only dependent arising does not conflict and contradict with the emptiness, but it actually reinforces emptiness. It supports the emptiness. Do you get it? Not only it doesn't contradict and conflict, but actually reinforce. It is empty because it's dependent arises. So that dependent arising reinforce the emptiness, support the emptiness. In the same way, other This is dependent arising. This cup is dependent arising because it's empty. Not only emptiness do not contradict and conflict, but it reinforces the dependent arisings. It supports the dependent arisings. It makes dependent arising established because of emptiness. So emptiness established by the reasoning of emptiness established by the reason of dependent arising, and dependent arising established by the reason of emptiness. So again, when we don't reflect, contemplate deeply on superficial level, it seems there's contradictions. Emptiness and dependent arisings. Do you get it? It seems like it's two opposite sides. How can something dependent arising is empty? How can it be dependent arising something empty? How can it be is emptiness? How can it be dependent arising? But if we try to analyze, more profoundly, more deeply, then we can understand. Not only they don't contradict, but they actually support. So that is. And verse number 9, it is through the reason of dependent origin that one does not lean towards extreme. So, because of dependent arisings, so then you don't fall into any of the extreme. As we mentioned, in order to understand the Buddha's final thought, the middle way, that is the Buddha's final thought, the middle way, in order to understand the middle way, you have to be free from the true extreme. One extreme is nihilism, that feeling the object or nothing exists. But when you say that object is dependent arising, how can you say it do not exist? Dependent arising means something exists, or something's arising or being produced or exists by depending on something, depending on another factors, condition, cause and condition, so forth. So therefore, it cannot be non-existence. If something is dependent arising, the word itself, dependent arising meaning being produced, arising or being produced means something coming into existence. Something coming into existing or being produced, arising by depending on something, depending on other factors, conditions. So when there is something being produced, how can you say there is nothing? So therefore, with that, it clears or dispels the extreme of nihilism that nothing, that object do not exist or nothing exists. But when you understand dependent arising in the meaning of emptiness, when you understand the dependent arising as a meaning of emptiness, as we mentioned before, as the meaning of emptiness, that means that that object, dependent arising object, is empty of inherent existence. Empty of inherent existence. And when you understand that dependent arising as the meaning of empty of independent existence, how can you conceive, or how can you see, or how can you believe that is truly your inherent existence? Do you get it? Because you see dependent arising as a meaning of emptiness. You see dependent arising is the emptiness. When you see dependent arising as an emptiness, meaning empty of inherent existence, so then there is no way that you hold that objects as a dependent arising, and therefore it clear the other extreme, the extreme of dominant or how we call eternalism. It not internalism. It's a what are the two extremes? Yeah. How do you say? Eternalism. Okay. Eternalism. Okay. So where was that? So that one does not lean towards any extreme, free from any of the extreme, and thereby finding your understanding the middle way, the right way, the right view, the middle way. That you have declared this excellently is the reason or savior of you being excellent speakers. And so here Lama Tsongkhapa is saying, you are excellent speaker, an exiled speaker, an uncomparable speakers, because no other teacher has spoke of that. No other teacher has spoke of, the emptiness being dependent arisings and dependent arising being empty. No other teacher has explained or spoke about that. You spoke about everything being empty because of dependent arisings. And you spoke about everything is dependent arising because of emptiness. And that is something no others spiritual teachers in the past has explained that, spoke about that. Even now, I think even the lot of other spiritual masters who came later after the Buddha's later, even they haven't spoke about that. Even they haven't spoke about that. As His Holiness Dalai Lama says, even the term some of the scientists actually told him in one of those mind and science conference, some of the scientists told him this word dependent arising or originate is a word that the science has been using in only recently. Even in the science world, in the scientific world, they didn't spoke about that. They didn't knew about that. Now they are understanding more and more about how everything is dependent arisings. In only not long ago, within less than 50 years. Before that, they were not, even the science were not talking about that. Even the scientist world, they were not talking much about dependent arising. Even they do talk about dependent arising, they are not talking about how everything is dependent arising. But now there is more and more, with more, I guess, better research, better technologies, everything there's more and more understanding, and more they are using even this term dependent arisings or dependent origin. And this is something that here the author Lama Tsongkhapa was saying, the Buddha already spoke about it more than 2,600 years ago. Okay, I think maybe today we will have here. So if there's any question, I can take a couple of questions. Any questions, anyone?
Any questions on Zoom?
Does not appear we have any questions on Zoom. Anybody? You do unmute yourself.
No questions. Wow. Good. Yes, Tony. You want to pass because maybe they need to hear. Thank you.
So, Geshe, as far as the Dalai Lama and the mind life that was started about 50 years ago, do you think that the Dalai Lama set up the mind life
Institution?
Let me back up. Not set up, but set them up. When he said many years ago that if science can prove that Buddhism is wrong, then Buddhism will have to reinvent itself. I think that was a setup by him because he knew where this thing was going. In that, at some point, the people in Mind Life and of course other organizations would come to the realization that science would have to change their view. I think he set them up.
Well, I
love it.
Oh, I can share a little bit what I've heard and I've known. I think Life and Science Conference started not 50 years ago, a little bit over 30 years ago. Yeah, a little bit over 30 years ago. With him and I forgot the name, one scientist from France, I think, French scientist. And I think when they wanted to have discussions between the Buddhist and science, I think that was someone giving the answer.
Bless you, Michael. And His Holiness shared that is when he said he want to have that discussions and that kind of conference and discussions with science. He said some of his own Western Buddhist practitioner told him, you shouldn't, it's not a good idea because the science can prove your path is a super species or and make you all of that. And Dalai Lama says he was not fearful. He said, Buddha himself said, analyze my teachings with reason and logics. And if we can withstand those reason and logic, you take it. If you cannot withstand reason and logic, then you don't have to take it because I said it. You don't have to accept it. You don't have to take it because I said it. That is a very basic, the freedom Buddha gave, and it's the foundation of how the Buddhism is. It has to be based on wisdom that is based on reason and logic. And so he said, if the scientists can prove with really reason and logic that those Buddhist concepts, some of them are wrong, that is not against Buddha's teaching. That is not against Buddha's principle, and we should be able to do that, And so he was not afraid to do that, and he started having those conferences. And through all these conferences, many of the scientists have started to have a different view on a lot of issues after they have having those conferences. And also through those conferences, he encouraged them to do more research, for example, meditation, compassions. And that is when they started doing the compassion, meditation on the compassion, whether the compassion had any effect and what kind of effect, whether the meditation
whether those compassion can be something that you can develop through practice and meditations, which at the very beginning, a lot of people thought you cannot develop. You are born with compassion or not born with compassion. But if you are not born with compassion, it's not something that through practice meditation you can develop. But with those research over the years, it has clearly result that shows through those practice and meditation, one can develop love and compassion, even if you don't have that before or much. And then the effect of that on your physical well-being, emotional, mental well-being, and all other benefit of that, So there has been more and more research on those different issues that, and all of them coming through those conferences. Yes. Absolutely, absolutely. Wisdom, the research, I think primarily at the very beginning, they focus on mindfulness meditations. Then they focus on compassion, has been another, and now some other research being doing on the, wisdom, renunciations, and the tantric practice, So there is more and more research being done that from a scientific world. In the past, they will just say, "Oh, it is just, there's no basis to do research and spend your time and the money to this. It is all superstitious and all this garbage." But now they are willing to put their skills, their time, their money to research because they have found a lot of benefit from those research, and so therefore definitely it has opened a lot of people's mind. Otherwise, might not have been open to a lot of those understandings,
Doug, do you want to unmute yourself and ask a question?
Just real quick, the Dalai Lama went into that organization with the wisdom and the direct experience. That's why I say, I think he set them up.
Yeah. So, I think, and his holiness has been always very clear candidate, even among the Tibetans, monks. If the science proves something wrong, we just can't say because Buddha said that, because Nagarjuna said that, and Chandrakiri said, my teacher says that. You can't just hold on that because those great scholars, philosophers, masters, even if they are great scholars, great practitioners, great meditators, if they cannot withstand the reason and logic, then we and so therefore, and
Geshe, there are two questions.
Yes, please.
Zoom. Doug?
Yes, hi. Hi, Geshe La. It's good to see you there. And I always enjoy your talks. So is it the case that dependent arising is a natural consequence of the idea of non-duality, the idea that all is one, all is connected? Does dependent arising naturally grow out of that idea of non-duality?
Well, I think dependent arising through the dependent arising will lead to non-dualistic view. I would say that, when you have a direct realization emptiness through the dependent arisings, then, you will be able to have the realization, the correct, unmistaken middle way, unmistaken emptiness. And when you have that understanding emptiness, then, you can lead to a state. One can reach a state of non-dualistic state through that understanding. So that will be what I would say.
Thank you.
Most welcome.
Mary, would you like to ask your question?
Hi, Geshe. Thank you so much for the teaching. I just wanted to make a comment. dependent arising fills me with so much hope. And the more I learn and study, the more positive I become. And it just makes me feel like things are truly possible, obviously. But anyway, I just wanted to share.
Okay, yeah, thank you, thank you. Yeah, I think, as you shared, I think a lot of time when people hear just emptiness without proper understanding of what emptiness, then I think they can become very depressed. You know, they can feel depressed, you know, when they understand emptiness incorrectly in the term of non-existence, and not understanding from the point of view of dependent arising. I think at the very beginning, I think earlier, even some of the Western scholars, earliest when they first got hold of Nagarjuna, some of those writings, and when they read all he said, "Oh, this do not exist, this do not exist," and because they didn't understood fully, then they thought he was kind of some kind of nihilisms, you know, kind of depressing or nihilism, rejecting everything, you know. But once you understand the meaning of emptiness from the point of view of dependent arising, then it is, as Mary you say, is uplifting. You understand that that everything is possible. Okay, so we do the dedications.
Dedication prayers. Yewadi ye
Nyo La
Sam
Chika Ma Pa La Pa Sho Sem Chorim Poche Ma Ke Panam Ke Kyoche Ke Wanyam Pa Me Paya Only Gong Du We do the medicine Buddha mantra 3 times. Ayatha Om Be Kanje Maha Be Kanje Ranja Samoga De Soha Ayatha Om Be Kanje Maha Be Kanje Samoga De Soha Ayatha Om Be Kanje Mahabe Kanze Be Ranza Samogate. So I think I wanted to share. There was a not long ago by His Holiness Dalai Lama's doctors, Western Tibetan doctors. The doctor who did the surgery as well as the physiotherapists that helped him, they came to see and they said, today is the 5th day since surgery, and they said he's doing very well, exceptional well. He's recovering much more exceptional than normally other people's recover, you know, and so they are surprised. I'm very happy for his progress that is making. And so now they are thinking maybe, they said maybe they are thinking now moving out of New York to some other places, more quieter place, better air and better. So anyway, I just wanted to share. So again, continue to keep in the prayer. Yeah.
Dedication for His Holiness the Dalai Lama. Gangri Rewa Kore Shinkam Dear Pandan Dewa Malu Shuwe Me Chenre Zigwa Tensin Gatso
Sabbe Siddhe Bhadu Tengyurochi.
In the land encircled by snow mountains, you are the source of all happiness and good. All powerful Chenrezig Tenzin Gyatso, please remain until samsara ends. Prayer for the swift return of Lama Zopa Rinpoche, fearless teacher and assembly of the children of the victorious one Shravakas, Pranayaka Buddhas. Victorious Losang, father and sons, along with the lineage masters, all the objects of refuge of infinite lands, please bestow the virtue and goodness of accomplishing this prayer here and now, holding and spreading the Muni's precious and complete teachings. Through the explanation and practice, you wore the armor of patience that is never discouraged. Incomparable, venerable Guru, to you I make request. While striving single-pointedly for the sake of the victorious one's teachings, the sole gateway through which all benefit and happiness emerge, and from other living beings, you suddenly departed to peace. What a great loss! Nevertheless, through the undeceiving truth of the blessings of the ocean of the three jewels, and the great waves of bodhicitta of the children of the victorious ones, may the smile of a reincarnation swiftly beam in glory for fortunate disciples.
Thank you very much, everyone, for joining, both in person and in online. Happy July 4th. Okay, thank you. Good night, everyone. Good night.